And we're going to be looking for Europe's democratic compass, as you know, for trust and resilience, and asking ourselves, can it be restored? So please look out for trust, look out for resilience, look out for remedies for disinformation in our conversation, and of ways of changing the conversation and looking, for example, for the European social contract, if this can be a way of talking about something different than what the populists and the anti-Europeans want us to be talking about. Please welcome to the stage the next panelist who will join me, Ms. Zsófia Fülöp, who is a Hungarian journalist at Lakmus, Hungary's only independent fact-checking website. Please, welcome. Ms. Alexandra Karppi from King's College London, the Department of Political Economy, and the host of Talk Eastern Europe, the Talk Eastern Europe podcast, and Mr. Sebastián Rodríguez, a campaign strategist. Please, come on. And Mr. Sebastián Rodríguez, who's a campaign strategist at the European Movement International, and who's working on the European Social Contract. Hi, Sebastián. Okay, listen, I think we have a lot of things to focus on here. Zsófia, maybe we'll start with you. You're a journalist, you're a fact checker, and you're tracking persistent forms of disinformation. Could you talk more about what you've encountered, and do you think that fact checking is a way of getting out of the mix that we're in?
Yes, thank you for that. In the morning session, I think we heard that maybe in European countries, a lot of people don't even know what's happening in other European countries, like in the politics. But I think many of you, if not all of you, know what happened in Hungary, my country, this year. So we had elections, and after 16 years, Viktor Orbán and his government were defeated. But if we talk about disinformation, we still have to go back to that time and also ahead of elections. We encountered a massive amount of disinformation in the last couple of years, but especially ahead of the elections. And we fear that there will be a lot of Russian disinformation and foreign interference, which at the end wasn't that massive. We had and we detected several Russian disinformation campaigns. Mostly these campaigns mostly targeted politicians from the TISA party who at the end won the election. And I wanted to show you some example. That's why I wanted to show you this slide. So Russian disinformation was not massive and not really successful. It didn't really reach a lot of people, and also it was really easy to spot. So, for example, this example, it was a fake website and a fake article targeting a politician from the TISA party, and she was accused of being in the human trafficking circle of Jeffrey Epstein in Hungary in the past, and what basically this disinformation campaign did was showing an email from the Epstein files, and they basically forged it because you could see that in the original email it was referring to a woman from New York, Agnes, and they forged it and they basically changed the name New York to Hungary. But it was super easy to spot it because in the Epstein file you can search for Hungary, Agnes, and all of these things. And basically all of the Russian disinformation campaign were like in this level, and I think fact-checking really worked in this sense. Because it was easy to spot it. But on the contrary, what we had massive domestic disinformation campaigns. No? Okay. A lot of AI-generated content. You might encounter these videos. These were all AI-generated, basically fear-mongering war videos, pushing the Fidesz government narrative of that if the opposition party, TISA party, would win the election, then all Hungarians have to enroll the military and go to Ukraine and fight in the front line. And they created influencer groups in social media, and also like the Fidesz proxy organization basically created a massive amount of AI-generated content like this. And I think these were really persistent, but also not in the way that people didn't know that they are AI-generated. I think most of the people knew that. But it was really massive because it was everywhere, on social media mostly. It was really impossible to, like, not, if you scrolled on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, these videos were everywhere. And it really played the people's emotion, and it really pushed the narrative coming from the Fidesz government on the public media, from all of the politicians. So basically, this whole narrative was everywhere, and this AI-generated content, I think, really played with this. And one more example, it's also AI videos, but more in a humorous way. We encountered a lot of TikTok accounts producing AI videos, mostly targeting Péter Magyar, who is the prime minister now. And it was, once again, if you look at these pictures, I think you can also say that, okay, these are AI-generated content. If you hear what he's saying in the video, it's kind of obvious. But the scale of these AI-generated content was supermassive, and it also played with the people's emotion, and it was impossible to not to encounter these videos. And I think that was the danger of it, that it basically you couldn't escape to see and hear all of this content.
And did the other side use these techniques? Did TISA use these techniques? Did they use AI-generated videos?
Not the TISA party. There's another party, the Democratic Coalition, the Socialist Party, and they used AI-generated videos mostly to push their narratives against the voting rights of people who are Hungarians but have double citizenship and living maybe in Romania or Ukraine or other neighboring countries, because their main narrative was that they wanted to like stop these people from voting. They said that these people shouldn't have the right to vote because they don't live in Hungary, and they created AI-generated content. But that was the only we spotted coming from opposition parties and not from the Fidesz government.
Do you still believe that AI can be treated as disinformation? Because I have this feeling that when I scroll the internet, AI is more of a joke than, you know, trying to sell something as a fact. And political parties use AI to further narratives which are caricatures. So is fact-checking a way to counter this? I mean, do you really believe that people believe these photos and they think that this is true? Isn't this just a campaign technique that everybody has to get used to?
Yeah, I think the way to handle this, it's not debunking as a fact checker, definitely, because it would be kind of ridiculous, you know, to like checking the content and say that, hey, these are like AI generated videos. I think which was really important in the Hungarian campaign, that we deal with this as a phenomenon, and we also show it to the people that like who's behind these accounts, who we also try to detect it, like who pays for this, and that the actors spreading these narratives, how they are connected to each other. And we also do a lot of media literacy at my organization, and I think these AI-generated contents are really good for like a media literacy training or workshop to show the people that, like, look, it's obvious that it's AI-generated, but through these videos we could talk about the dangers, the consequences, and I mean, these videos were obvious that they are AI generated, but I think AI is getting more and more realistic. And I think with media literacy through these videos, which are obvious, we can show the people how to spot and detect it, and it can help people to spot the more realistic ones as well.
Okay, thank you. I think I'm going to blow up this panel and say this. Don't you believe that we're basically in a post-truth era, and that what we were supposed to be talking about is trust, is disinformation, is the way information is disseminated, whereas today we're living in a world where truth is not something that's most important. What's important is what you see on your screen. So my question to you would be, is this really a trust issue? And if not, then how should this be countered?
Yes, I think this is a good question. I mean, it is a trust issue in the sense that, you know, look, here's what I would say to your question about, for example, these AI videos. These are essentially like the new political cartoon. I think, at least right now, with the level of technology we have, we're all aware it's the message, yeah, behind this, not so much the content. So, unfortunately, I think whether we like it or not, and I mean royal we, all of us, you know, civil society, independent media, we are going to have to become experts as well in marketing, in PR, in content creation. I think this is the fortunate or unfortunate reality of where things are heading. I mean, honestly, as much as we can talk about how sophisticated the tools of manipulation are now, and I think we must be honest that from a regulatory standpoint, we're still behind, and we can speak more about this. But from the perspective of somebody in civil society, somebody in independent media, I mean, we also need to adapt to this new reality. And, you know, we need to be, frankly, thinking about how do we make democracy cool? I know that sounds very silly and maybe a bit plastic, but I mean, what is working are these cool memes, cool AI-generated videos. Whether they're true or not is completely irrelevant. And maybe this is a problem for public discourse. Maybe it is a problem for democracy in the long run. But in the short run, we will continue to lose out if we don't adapt in this way. And this is going to depend so much on the context, what local messages will resonate. And it matters very much who's at the table to build those narratives. I mean, look, we all talk a lot in our bubbles about how do we get youth to the table? How do we integrate them in political processes? I mean, ask them, what do they want to see from us, yeah? I mean, we can be doing so much more to make sure that they're there to drive some of this narrative creation, and they know the tools better than us, let's be honest about that too.
So how do we counter this? Because, you know, we have the European Democracy Shield, we have media regulations, there's the DSA, there's a number of regulations. But don't you think that they might be that we might be fighting the war that's behind us and not the war that's ahead of us, especially in a world where, because I noticed this down from the presentation, you wrote, hashtags are no longer conversations, they are battlegrounds won by the more coordinated infrastructure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first I would agree that, you know, the massive mobilization of resources behind manipulation, whether that's coming from autocrats, geopolitical spoilers, or frankly businesses, I mean, we're kidding ourselves if we think we're keeping pace with that mobilization of resources. I mean, I know we'll speak more, of course, on the panel about the role of civil society, but I mean, we're expecting every day David to defeat Goliath. We are more under-resourced than ever before. We all talk all the time about this burnout and the financing crisis. I won't, you know, repeat what we all know to be true, but how can we expect fact checkers to combat this at the level of support they're receiving being the lowest it ever is, the threats they receive daily being the worst they've ever been? So, I mean, from this perspective, I would say yes, we're too reactive. We're not mobilizing resources as quickly as we should be and could be. To the regulatory tools you mentioned, important visionary tools, and in a way they are the minimum threshold, but not all of these provisions are binding. They're not as expansive as they could be. Implementation is, of course, extremely uneven. And, you know, we are starting to see that we are being outpaced, basically, by the bad guys, if you want to, again, put it very plastically. So, you know, this is what we're seeing. And we know disinformation thrives in the most fragile institutional environments. We know that it thrives where there is economic and geopolitical uncertainty. And we essentially allow those waves to wash over us and over our populations. And as I said, you know, in answering your first question, we're not taking the narrative by the reins, and we're not changing the narrative at all. We're just allowing that to basically, those waves to crash over us. So I know you told me before we sat down to be optimistic, but we're not keeping pace. It's hard to be optimistic in that context.
Yeah, I'm not really an optimist at this point, but I think this is one of many wake-up calls that we need to acknowledge, I think. Moving on to Sebastián. I understand you have the best job on this panel because you're going to tell us how to change the conversation and not how to try to stop the flood, but how to ride the wave. So what are your ideas onto how to change the conversation?
Can everyone hear me well? And are there people who are also listening through the Bulgarian translation from English to Hungarian? Just to know, to speak slowly. I know that the work of the translators is extremely difficult, especially with a southern Spaniard. I am happy to be the optimist here, and I can point to very recent events where we, pro-Europeans, won. In Budapest, in Hungary, we won. So clearly, this AI-generated content wasn't convincing enough. You are from Hungary, you know that the reality on the ground was that the candidate had already made very bold movements to, one, simplify and make sure that he's the only one running against the Orbán. Very clever. And second, he hit the ground, and he worked offline, and he talked to people in the real world, and a combination of many other things. So I think I was also a volunteer in Budapest, self-organized. We produced AI-generated videos like the ones probably that you picked up, supporting the candidate, Peter Magyar. In our videos, what we were trying to do, instead of scaring people, we were trying to empower people. We would take videos from or pictures from the revolution against the communists, and then we would transform them into color videos, so from black and white to color, and then transition into today's landscape in a way saying, it's for you, Hungarians, and only for you to put a stop to this authoritarian. You did it back in the 80s, and now, today, you have a chance to do this again with pride, with, you know, putting Hungarians' interest, real Hungarian interest at heart. And I'm not claiming that our videos made a difference. I think AI-generated videos mobilize those who are already convinced. So if you are angry, AI-generated videos will make you angrier. And if you are an optimist and you think change is possible, it doesn't hurt some feel-good videos about, hey, you're on the winning side, you're going to get over the line. But I think the fundamentals is, and the example that we also saw in Bulgaria, like the best way to tackle this, and look at how I bridge to my part, is fixing what's wrong with our societies, right?
Is this a moment to play a film?
Exactly, yeah, now it's the time, yeah.
We did what we were supposed to do. We studied, we got jobs, we tried to build a life. We are stuck in a vicious circle where everything costs more and we earn less. Buying a home feels impossible. We work all the time and still feel like we're falling behind. But maybe this is the moment to turn things around. To rethink the deal between us and the society we live in. A deal that makes it possible to build a future without constant stress and insecurity. That's what a real social contract should offer. So if you could change one thing to make life fairer for our generation, what would it be? Share your thoughts. Let's shape a better future together.
So what would you change?
Okay, so this is a project that got me to speak today with you and to spend these 2 days in beautiful Zsófia. So I'm going to explain a little bit the rationale behind. This is an EU-funded research project, Horizon project, which is being led by leading scientists, social scientists on populism, inequality, digital transition, you name it. And what we are doing is, with the humble resources, I have to say, I wish they give us more money, but we are trying to bring citizens into a conversation about how a social contract in today's terms would look like. And to do that on the ground, like really we're investing a lot of resources to do things with people face to face, because conversations are different when we are, like today, face to face. The idea of a social contract for some people, especially the ones that we are targeting today with this project, it's very ambiguous. They don't know what they know. Even our moderator asked me, what are you talking about? So you trigger me to think, how can I explain a social contract to everyone, to my father, right? And it's really what individuals like us can reasonably expect from a system that we are being asked to support, right? What can we reasonably expect? We can reasonably expect having decent housing, building a family, not going crazy on holidays, just having a roof over your head and being able to build a family, equality in the workplace, in all aspects of society, owning or making sure that big tech platforms take care of your data and that your data is protected, and even I would go further, that it's that it's truly yours, and then you have you are not a product of these platforms, but you are actually remunerated through giving them your data for them to make money off. On artificial intelligence, right? We see now a backlash on the narratives about AI, and more people are fearful than hopeful, right? And so that's how we land into this project. We are trying to write this social contract, which we will then put in front of decision makers. Ultimately, it's politicians who need to make these things happen, and the role of civil society is to be the ones helping in the translation, right? Like our colleagues in the cabins. I think ourselves, civil society, sometimes as the ones who translate what's happening on the ground, on the real world language, to decision makers in Brussels, in Zsófia, Madrid, etc. About and how we also are trying to approach this in a way that people engage is try not to gaslight people into thinking everything is great, right? Why are you complaining? Or if they vote the wrong way, we say you just voted the wrong guy. You just don't know how it's good for you. I think Dave Keating, I don't know if he's still with us, that he at some point said, Europeans, they don't know what they are doing. And then he asked us to believe in ourselves. So which one is it? Do we know what we are doing, and therefore we can make decisions? Or we don't know what we are doing, and therefore we need someone, definitely not an American, to tell us what to do, right? We believe in this project that people in Europe should write this contract, and should not write them alone. It shouldn't be divisive. It's not what divides you and me on, for example, use of AI, but it's how we make sure that we feel in control. Like even in migration is a really good example. When we do these focus groups for this project, the scientists and everyone, even the European Commission came to us and said, yeah, careful what we are going to do with migration. And then we managed, and we had a very fine, respectful conversation about migration. So it's not about yes or no. I think most people agree that migration is needed and is net positive. That's, if you look at public opinion, that's there consistently. It's about how we manage. And how do we give people a sense that they are controlling this phenomenon, right? So when we talk then about how would that look like, then they found compromise and they found agreement very, very quickly. So more of that and less of divisive politics. Huh?
Okay, but this is going to be a difficult question, because I understand what you're saying is we need to get our story straight and to demand a social contract. What if the system cannot deliver? What if the system cannot deliver? What if we say we want affordable housing, we want healthcare, we want education?
Yeah. Yeah. The best example, analogy that I'm going to use for that is the celebration of the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Declaration of Independence, just a couple of days ago. And the colonists, what they started demanding was not independence, right? They started demanding taxation with representation and maybe a more fair social contract with the British king, right? And the British did not listen to these colonists. In fact, they reacted angrily with violence, etc. And so they said, okay, if this system doesn't fit to us, then we are going to become revolutionaries. And then they became revolutionaries. And probably not listening was only second to Brexit. It was the biggest mistake by the British in their history. We are right now in the same situation. People are telling us left and right, the system is not delivering. This is the number one consistent feedback we get on the surveys that we run with these ads. Do you feel the system is delivering for you? No. No. Do you still think that we can work to make this, to balance this, to put priorities on housing, put priorities on jobs, wages? They say yes. If we don't listen, the revolutionaries are going to come. This time, the revolutionaries are not like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, I can tell you that. They are people who want to take us back to a nostalgic past. I never heard George Washington saying, I wish we could go back to the times where the British taxed us for tea. Never they said that. They were forward-looking, they wanted new rights, they wanted new freedoms. These revolutionaries that we have today, they are nothing of this sort. So this time we need to listen. And I think it's a responsibility of civil society to again, push so that our decision makers listen. And there is no other alternative and that's why I think we need to double down. We need to engage in elections. If they are using AI-generated content, we should be using AI-generated content. If they are repurposing Facebook groups, my question is, why didn't we do the same? Because we are very good auditors of what's happening, but we need to be actors, right? So I know it's not a straight answer, but I think we're doing our part to at least put in words what we think is a combination of bottom-up, like people, workshops, focus groups, and also social scientists. So we are not like fully populist, right? It's not like, oh, the people. Well, it's the people, but within also a system of thinking by leading scientists. So science, even if it's in the political side, is also important. And yeah, opportunities like today hopefully inspire more people to make those in power listen.
I want to go back to the question and the issue of trust. And what I'm wondering is, who do we trust and who will we trust in the future in this post-truth era? I mean, what do you think? Where can we look for seeds of trust, for things that will in the future? Because I don't think it's journalists anymore. I don't know if it's fact-checking institutions. It's not politicians. It's not institutions as such. So how do we rebuild trust and around what?
Yeah, I think definitely not journalists who people trust, and I think fact checkers have even a lower trust because I'm not really hopeful in this sense, because I think if I say I'm a journalist, that maybe I can get some like weird looks, but if I say if I'm a fact checker, a lot of people think that also you're the one censoring the internet and you know, like saying the platforms you should take down this and this, and I always have to explain that I don't have this power, I don't want this power, and I don't have it, I've never had. I think a lot of people consume news from social media. There's a lot of influencers, a lot of newsfluencers who are like really entering into the media. They are not journalists, but they are talking about the news. They're producing these really short, really viral, really catchy videos, and I think we kind of have to work with them, and as a media, and also to somehow talk to them and like work together. But I think I really believe in like the power of discussions, and as I mentioned, we have a lot of media literacy training, and I think if we meet and talk to the people who, you know, like otherwise may be really targeted by propaganda or disinformation, we can make a difference. And I have an example for this. Ahead of the elections, we did a lot of, with my colleagues, we did a lot of media literacy training, and you know, usually these events are happening in Budapest and big cities where people are more educated, less maybe targeted by these disinformation campaign. So we try to find organization working on rural areas and on the countryside. So we went to a really tiny village near the Romanian border. They have barely 300 inhabitants, and mostly Roma people, and there's a wonderful NGO working with them, and we provided media literacy training for them. And those people consume news mostly from the public media, mostly from public TV, and also Facebook. And I think why it was really successful, that we didn't want to convince them that, you know, what you hear from the public media or from Facebook groups are outright lies and you shouldn't consume it. We didn't want to convince them at all. We just provided some examples, and we try to say to them that if you consume the news, you should really check it and use multiple sources. You should be skeptical, you should doubt what you see before you share it. Let's stop a little bit and think about it. And we also try to not just show them like political examples, but also, for example, online scams, which really affects their everyday lives and their pocket and the money. And I think it was really successful. After that training, some people came to me and they asked, like, so what we see on the TV, it's like really lie, and we really have to like doubt everything. And I told them, like, of course, like, you cannot doubt everything because then you just go crazy, but you have to have this like healthy skepticism, and you have to kind of develop this critical thinking. And I think that's also why I'm hopeful, and also I think if we want to rebuild trust with journalism and democracy and politicians and just the word, I think we really need to talk to the people and not to convince them, because maybe we don't agree with them, but we have to like spread the message that the critical thinking, and we also, because there's a lot of media literacy training, for example, in high schools or universities, but I think we really have to talk to senior citizens because they are super exposed to all of this, and also like people in the rural areas. And if we can have this conversation, I think we can plant the seeds and we can talk about critical thinking. And if there are like good NGOs and media organization dealing with this, I think it can, in the long term, obviously, it needs time, but in the long term, I think it can make a difference.
This is very interesting, and I can relate to this because I think it was very similar in Poland. But I understand what we're talking about now is the opposite of building trust. It's about critical thinking and undermining trust to bad actors. So, I mean, this is definitely a way to go, especially in a situation where you're living in a political regime that you want to change. But in the other, in the other direction, what do you do to rebuild trust, especially if you've been working on critical thinking? Because the flip side of critical thinking is, for example, people who won't trust science, people who won't trust pharmaceutical companies, people who will say that maybe we don't want to be vaccinated, etc. So I know it's very difficult to strike the balance, but the question is, how do we build trust in this new post-truth era?
Well, I think first we do have to go back to the institutional bedrock, yeah? I mean, at a very basic level, especially certain sectors now essentially have a bad rap, right? So security sector, intelligence sector, of course, there's going to need to be a level of black box, okay, for these kinds of, for those sectors in particular. But I mean, I think, for example, of the Romanian case, yeah? Like ultimately, the decision to annul the elections at the end of 2024 there, I mean, it was easy. It was easy, low-hanging fruit for spoilers to come in and say, well, what is their evidence? What, we don't know what's true. We don't have the facts, because it was being handled by a very, kind of opaque institutional setup. So, ultimately, there are institutional answers as a starting point to this. Whether or not, we can deliver on these new contracts is a much bigger question. But what we can do is show certain sectors are not as opaque as they would like to be, frankly. This is, I think, maybe the first starting point. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, that we always talk, especially in Eastern Europe, about how personalistic politics are. But then at the same time, and we say this is a problem, right? It's a problem that you have this, usually a man, the face of this political movement. But this is telling us something, that people are looking for that interpersonal. There is a human element that we will never be able to kind of deprogram. And so the question is exactly how do we balance going to the people, not talking at them, working with them. And I think, honestly, when you look at the development of civil society, whatever this really means anymore, over the last 3 decades, we are at this kind of bubble that is to pop soon, where what we think of when we think of civil society, if we're honest, is small, non-profit, non-commercial media, and then maybe some like extremist activists, basically, on the streets. This is no longer sustainable for 2026 for all the reasons we've been discussing. So it will burst, and I cannot predict what will come next. But the point I'm getting at to your question about trust is there will be new formats, I think, where citizens will look for that. And maybe already when you look at the right, extremist right, you start to see what that would be. A lot of these groups, let's say anti-migrant groups, very prevalent throughout the Balkans, really are just neighbors that came together, upset about a problem they saw in their society. Of course, I'm not condoning how they go about that, but the point is, it began as an association of citizens. This is what was our core initially at civil society, and somewhere along the way, because of how we structured our funding, how we've structured this industry now, we have completely lost that. So now there is not even it's not even a lack of trust in political institutions. I mean, there's no legitimacy for civil society anymore, no trust, and maybe we haven't earned it. Again, I'm speaking as a member of this sector. Maybe we haven't earned it, actually. So I don't have a clear answer. My point is that I think a reckoning is coming, unfortunately. I don't know what will come next. You know, many people in the Balkans are very excited now about these student protests because they have these student plena now, these plenums where they make decisions together in a very, let's say, proto-democratic way. Everyone's very excited about this new democratic innovation. Actually, it's a very old institution, old innovation. So, you know, who knows what will come out of it? The reality is that we need to keep the core set of principles at the forefront. Yes, it can be post-truth. Maybe we can all have our own truths and we can live in this nice, more relativistic world, but there needs to be minimum thresholds of protections of human rights. Like, we have, again, ceded the narrative to the autocrats that these are some la-la land ideas, that human rights is only minority rights. No, it is for the disadvantaged, it is for minorities, but it's for all of us. And somehow we have ceded this narrative where it feels impossible. And again, I think we're at this crest that will break, and we'll have some new formats, let's say new organizational formats that we need to be open to supporting, and we need to be open to allowing that to innovate. Right now, innovation is completely stifled. A civic innovation, if you want to call it this, is completely stifled. Again, I won't go on and on about the project funding and why this is so problematic, but we don't know where that next corner is going to be because we don't support that kind of development. And once we do so, I think the answer to your question will be much more clear.
I have a very scary perspective of who we're going to trust in the future. And I worry that it's going to be AI. I mean, it's just going to be agents. It's going to be Grok. It's going to be Claude. It's this question, and you've seen this on social media. At least you could see it a couple of minutes ago. In a conversation, when you're looking for somebody to tell you how it is, you'd ask AI. So aren't you worried that this is the direction which we're heading? I mean, have we not counterfeited, for a number of reasons, because institutions are weak, because there's no person of authority, because the media landscape is changing, because of a number of things that we've done wrong, that basically, and because of the fact that technology is technology, that this is the direction which we're heading, and at some point, we're going to trust money, we're going to trust, at the end of the day, big tech, even though we're going to say that we deeply distrust deep tech, but we're going to trust their products, and at the end of the day, we're going to trust, AI agents.
I mean, it's a very possible reality, yeah? I mean, it is. On the other hand, we are still at the point where there's a lot of skepticism around AI, and I'm very glad that you mentioned, Zsófia, the senior citizens, because I think actually when you talk to younger people who are coming up, they are much more attuned to this than any of us up here are, actually. And this is what gives me maybe a sliver of optimism, that they are actually much more well-versed in privacy, data protection rights than I think many of us in this room, and all of the implications that come with that. So they, I think, will come up with this new contract for how we will deal with this AI behemoth that now I think many of us are quite fearful of. On the other hand, as much as tech company makes AI this black box, on the other hand, it's only as good, let's say, as the content that's out there that it's pulling from, right? The large language models it uses, not to get too technical and like everyone falls asleep, but it's pulling from what we've already put out there. So the more that we allow there to be disinformation slop online, these clickbait sites that are literally just farms for all of this information, and this is a regulatory problem that can be solved, right? This is not, an endless pit. That is what's making them, I think, more and more prone to spread disinformation and also to in a way, favor certain narrative and biases over others. So, we do have some potential to shape AI, not just by limiting it, but also actively participating. It sounds crazy to say, in a conversation with it, in a sense. Look, I mean, I'm no AI expert. I think it's something we're all going to have to learn to live with, right? And, I mean, let's see where it takes us.
I totally agree. I've noticed recently that we keep talking about children and technology, children and AI, children and screens. And when I look at my children and when I look at my parents, it feels as if my children are better suited to understand what's happening on their screens than my parents are, with all love and respect to my parents. Sebastián, and this is a segue to a question I wanted to ask about the social contract. And this is a generational gap, because I strongly believe that the direction in which we're heading, apart from all the other problems we've discussed, is a very strong generational conflict, especially in our part of the world, but I think mainly in Europe. The fact that basically we're a continent that's growing older, and there's going to be very different needs for people who will be over 50 and people who will be over 20. So how do you shape a social contract, which I understand needs to be a lowest common denominator, when you're going to have a very different set of needs for older voters and for younger people entering the adulthood, basically?
Yeah, and intergenerational solidarity, right? It's not as much low as people think, but it is definitely at its lowest. Well, at the end of the day, what we see in the context always of the project is that there is no real young versus old debate. And I think everyone understands that, if anything, we should support pensioners even more, that they are not getting enough to get by. I think that is an assessment that in the different focus groups that we run, people said, yeah, I think we need to raise the pension because it's not enough. It's closely related to the cost of living. And
do they say we need to raise the taxes in order to do that?
No, of course, yeah. So the bridge to that is, of course, we need to have growth, higher salaries, more productivity. Even though they don't mention productivity, people don't. They are immediately concerned by what's around them, so they cannot think about. They don't wake up and say, how is going to be the productivity of my company today? No, they don't. They don't do that. They are worried about filling the fridge, paying bills, etc. What they say, what they would say though, is that what they are worried about is whether they are going to get their pension themselves. That's the number one worry, right? And there is a sense that they know, maybe it's a little bit even cynicism, saying because old people are, every time there are more and they go to vote, politicians will always raise their pensions, so pensions will always be paid. So they have like this idea of, oh yeah, we should also be a voting bloc, young people. But they are really worried about whether all the money that they are going to be asked to put towards Social Security, they are not going to see that money. And so that moves to the sphere of solutions. So then we say, what would be the solution for that? Because now I think by 2050, there's going to be one person in retirement for one person working, right? You can double check me on that, but I think it's going in that direction. And they say, we need migration to fill the gap whilst we figure this out. That's when migration comes in. Right? When you put people in the scenario of, guys, we need to support this system, then they say, well, if we can have migration, people in Spain would say preferentially from Latin American countries over sub-Saharan. They say that, and I think it's legitimate to say, look, if we need to do this, let's do it with people who share already our language, etc. But fundamentally, that they come and they meet minimum conditions of working, paying their taxes, observing, participating in the culture, and be respectful. So I think everyone agrees on that. And then there are solutions there which are not popular, but whoever wants to run like a political party, here's an idea, which is there are solutions like in Chile, they did this capitalization of the pension fund. So they put all this money, which is huge, they put it to work in the capital market, and then you contribute to your own individual account. And then when you retire, you get that money back. Of course, they understand that there would be a gap that they put, but they did not get, and that is tax or Social Security. But when we put ideas like this that are fairer, in the sense of, okay, I can see how I'm contributing, but I'm gonna get my right, then they come around and they say, okay, well, I think we can figure this out. They don't like in Spain especially, where I did this, it's toxic to talk about this type of solutions for pensions. It's very toxic because of, I think it's linked to the Pinochet authoritarian rule in Chile, and so they think because of that, then everything that happened there is bad. But there are other examples in the Nordics also to be inspired about. So they really move into, there is a solution for that. And then they are part of the conversation, right? They are not gonna become super capitalists overnight, because especially young people, they are not. But they start working towards a solution. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Listen, this is the time for your questions. We've touched a number of topics. We've gone through disinformation, trust, generation gap, AI. So is there any intervention that you like? Is there some direction that you like us to go in? Do you have any questions to what's been said? Do you have any comments which will be optimistic or pessimistic? I think that there's a dividing line on this panel between the optimists and the pessimists. I won't say who's who, but maybe you've guessed. So do you have any questions? If you do, then please raise your hand. And if you don't, I'm going to keep talking about the generation gap, because this is something I like talking about. But this is your last chance to jump in. Okay, back to us. I have this feeling, I have to tell you, that basically we're in a moment which is going to redefine politics the way we understand it, and the generation gap is one of the reasons for this. And it's because, for example, housing and healthcare, which traditionally have been left-wing issues, are going to be very different. And in societies like the country where I'm coming from, Poland, it's old people who will be voting in governments. So they will be raising tax. I will be raising taxes in order to pay for my pensions, and this will be causing a very, very strong conflict, I think, which can be weaponized also through what we've been talking about. I mean, and through outside actors, undemocratic actors. So I feel that we're heading towards a perfect storm. And I'm not certain if we understand how difficult the situation is and the direction which we're heading. So I'm looking for optimism now. Can you relate to what I've just said? Who goes first? No, nothing? Sebastián, come on.
Okay, defending the optimist camp again. Yeah, we are heading to a perfect storm, but we see more and more examples today than in 2016 or 2020, when I remember the UK abandoned the EU, and that triggered like a chain of events that is still we see the consequences today. I think the solution. Here's the thing. In this room, probably, and I'm not judging. I only met a few of you over lunch, and but in this room, probably we are we would like solutions to be in one way, and probably the solutions that are going to work are going to be, let's say, a little bit more the right words that we would like, okay? Let's put it this way. I think no one here, we are all here defenders of human rights, and we believe every human, no human is illegal, and that we need to treat humans with the decency that they, and the dignity that they deserve. But at the end of the day, you are seeing probably a solution that migration is going to be substantially controlled, reduced, and we're going to see things that we don't like migrant camps outside the EU borders, where we don't have ways to figuring out if they are being treated with, with the same way that they would be treated in our continent. And we'll have to live with that, I think, because the solutions are coming through that way. Because right now people have a feeling of loss of control. That is what I see across the board. Right now, and probably you know that this is also very emotional, right? That our brains are wired to fear to lose something that we have than gaining something new. That is called loss aversion. And this is a human trait that it takes us back to the caves. And that means that right now, we fear losing our identity, first thing. Identity being viewed from a very stereotypical, nostalgic way. Like the identity of a Spaniard is, you have a certain type. And the identity of a French is a specific one. And therefore, another thing, which is the ability that we have humans to put people in an outside group versus our group. We have this combination right now. So we are fearing that we are losing our identity, our safety in our streets, the power that we have over big tech companies. And of course, who is the out group? The migrants, the big tech, the billionaires, or the EU. And we, the Europeans, we keep communicating about the good things that the EU does, right? And how much we can gain from being in the EU. Look, the EU is perfect, and you can travel, and you don't have roam, and you don't have to pay for your phone when you go. And we keep insisting on these ideas that apply to literally 3% of the population who do travel, and who is affected by that. And I think we need to start playing on these emotional traits. Do you want to lose your freedom? Do you want your rights to vanish by an authoritarian government? Do you want? Do we see authoritarians and populists and demagogues as the out group who are lying, who identify the problems, but then they always use scapegoats, and usually the scapegoats are the weakest, right? How can we also start communicating on that, making people aware that we can lose the freedoms and the rights that we have, and mobilize people around this idea instead of keep insisting how good it would be to approve this new law or to bring Montenegro to the EU, which I agree, but some people will say, is that really the priority? I say, well, yeah, because maybe Russia comes in Montenegro and then we lose, yeah, but that's not a strong argument. So what we have is our freedoms, our rights, the freedom and the rights of our daughter, of our cousin. Do we want to protect that against those who want to take it away from us? That is the narrative, to go and to build and to fight. And I think that's the narrative that also Peter Magyar used very convincing. And he convinced people who are very conservative, right? On the countryside and he went and said, what you don't have a doctor anymore. The school was closed, so now your kids have to travel to the next village. And now all these things that you have, which wasn't a lot, right? Let's go back to the social contract. No one is asking that in every village of Hungary there is a harbor. It's a school with a teacher and a doctor. Those things are fading away because there are corrupt demagogues, authoritarians who are lying to you to get to power. And once they get into power, they never leave. And he won. So I see, yeah, we can do it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think we have some questions. There's a question in the first row, a question in the fourth row.
Thank you, moderator and panelists. You answered my question, and you answered the question, can trust and resilience be restored? From a civil society perspective, yes, it can. But we cannot let Ursula von der Leyen and her team of commissioners navigate and trying to restore trust and resilience. They can't. So thank you for sharing everything that you were doing and that your opinions and your findings. You also give me confirmation that it was the right thing to do to write a letter to Ursula von der Leyen with 250 civil society organizations and all the richness of thinking they have, to ask her, talk to us before you go into this high-level meeting. She was talking to captains of industry only, and not to civil society representatives who carry that richness of thinking about the future, about how to navigate in a perfect storm and to come out of it, yes, in a transformed world, but that's okay. So when you ask me, do you have a question? Not really, but you provided the answer by just being here. So thank you very much. And we will write the letter again to Ursula von der Leyen. Talk to your people, talk to civil society representatives before you go into your high-level meeting where you make decisions about the future of Europe. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That was almost a question. Let's see if we have a question back in the fourth row.
Good afternoon. Thank you. My name is Pavel Trantina. I'm EESC member and Vice President of European Movement in Czechia. And I'm very grateful for all your examples that you shared with us. And I'm just returning back to the panel's title, If Trust and Resilience Can be restored. Well, we've heard a number of examples in the past that the most resilient societies are those where people have trust in the institutions. That is not definitely the case of Hungary, or that was not the case of Hungary until the recent change. That is not that much the case of Balkans, and most recently not the case of Central Europe either. And I'm just wondering, what can we as civil society organizations do in order to increase trust, if not into the institutions, then at least into the system in which we operate, because otherwise we are in real troubles. And actually, I got provoked by Sebastián's last remedy, or how would I call it, advice, actually, and it seems to me a bit too negative or negativist. It's fear-mongering in a different way than actually the populist politicians do. I would offer you a different solution that we have learned about last week in Ireland. And this is about building resilient communities. The communities where people really get hands-on experience, that they can influence the things around themselves for better. And I wonder whether I'm too naivist to suggest this second way, rather than actually warning people what they can lose, because they are losing it anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll take...
Bonjour, Thierry Libar. I will speak in French, so you can put your headphones. Et je parle essentiellement parce qu'on n'a pas encore entendu beaucoup parler français.
So I'm speaking French. We didn't hear much French, so let me remedy this so that the interpreters get a little bit of exercise too. I have worked with the European Economic and Social Committee on this disinformation and what we can do, what society can do about it. We must keep in mind two illusions. The first one is fact-checking. That's very important and necessary, but it's not enough. It's not sufficient because it always follows. It's always late. It lags behind. And the second illusion is media literacy and education. I heard from many here that we need to foster media literacy. However, what's important here is that we should remember that disinformation usually works on the most highly educated among us. What was not mentioned, I think, is the role that advertisement play in disinformation? Because nowadays, 2/3 of information flows are digital. And the way this functions, the so-called planned or embedded advertisement, is that advertisers go wherever there is a lot of engagement, sharing, for example, and that's why they end up on disinformation websites. They don't know they are disinformation websites, but some studies show that there are like hundreds of millions of euro paid for advertisements in Europe. And another thing that you were very right to point out was that we can fight disinformation only when we have managed to patch up trust in traditional information sources, traditional media. Only when trust is restored there can we fight disinformation. Recently, I saw a commentary on Donald Trump's campaigning, and what they said was it wasn't about fake news, post-truth, and so on. People knew very well that he was lying to them, but they didn't care because he was charismatic and he was energetic. How do we approach truth? I think our approach to truth is where the issue lies.
Zsófia, regarding your experience, can we conclude that the political campaigns driven by artificial intelligence are doomed to failure? Did you understand, no?
No.
Regarding experience from Hungary, can we conclude that political campaigns using artificial intelligence are doomed to failure because Orban's campaign failed?
Over here, last question.
Yes, Paul Rübig from Austria. European and Economic Social Committee, we always try to understand what is the need of the civil society. And I think one of the real issues is how can we communicate better? First of all, to the organizations which send us to our job. So how can we increase the communication with our own organizations? And it's a very strong base in Europe where we all are sent and where we have trust, and trust is a real issue in communication. So the internal communication, what could we do? That's my question. And the second thing is for outside. How can we reach communities and NGOs and like-minded people with more detailed information on our work? I think it's very good to have a targeted communication. And what would your solution be for a better targeted communication globally and also within European Union?
Last question. Andrzej, we have last question from the journalist from Romania.
I'm Ana Maria Kononovic from Radio Romania International, and as Romania made such a good case study, I would want to ask you whether you have any suggestion in how could we stir massively this active doubting you were talking about, so that all the people who still think they were kidnapped, their leader, would come to their senses, because we still have those political comedians who are very much loved. Thank you.
Let's go first. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I can start. So related to the AI, if it was a failure or not, I think you mentioned that there were like several reasons why after 16 years the Orban regime fell, and it was definitely not just because of the AI videos, you know, like I think there were several reasons, and one was usually the Fidesz built their campaign on scapegoating and picking a certain group who could be blamed for everything bad in the country and in the world. Previously, it was the Roma community, then the migrants, then the LGBTQ community, then the migrants again, then Ukraine. And I think it was working for a while, and it was working 2 years ago in the local elections and EU elections, that the Orban government blamed Ukraine and the opposition, dragging Hungary into the Ukrainian war. But they didn't come up with anything new. They pushed this idea once again, and I think after a lot of years of inciting hatred and fear-mongering, people were just tired of it, and it was just enough. And I think that was one key factor. And of course, the AI-generated content was really like played in these narratives, and it really, the AI-generated videos really pushed this narrative. But it was not because of the AI, if it was, you know, like well-made or not, but it was just the narrative was not enough, and people were fed up with this fear-mongering. And of course, like there were other factors like dissatisfaction with the economy and corruption, and also that a new political figure could just emerge basically from nothing. And he also said that we have to change the government, but we also have to change the opposition. And like all of these factors play together, and of course like AI was part of it, but I think, you know, if they created like super well-made, super realistic AI-generated content, it also wouldn't help. So it was part of it, but definitely not the main reason. The doubting you asked, I think there's no like magic trick in this. I really think that you have to keep talking to the people, and it's a really long-term investment. It won't change it from one day to another. I think in a society which is so divided, like in the case of Hungary, I think we need a lot of time to change this. And also, I think if we have so divided society, we tend to think that we have to convince the other side. Like there's us and there's they, and we have to convince the other side that we are right and you're the one who doesn't know what's going on. And I think that it's really, really bad. And I think even if we don't agree, we have to find common grounds. And recently I heard a really good example from a friend who said that I have a colleague who is really afraid now because she said that after the election she voted for Fidesz and she's a Fidesz supporter, and now she's like super afraid like what will happen, you know, in the economy and if we are going to war and something like that. And my friend told me that I don't want to convince her. I don't want to say that, you know, everything will be fine. Rather, I ask questions like, is there anything since April you like? Is there any decision from the new government you like? And you know, if you ask these questions, you can start a conversation, and if you don't want to convince that person that everything will be perfect from now on and you were the stupid one until this time, I think it can start and it can boost a discussion, and in the long term, maybe we can better understand each other and also like plant the seeds of critical thinking. But it's really, we need a lot of patience, we need a lot of time, and we have to be persistent, and we have to talk to each other, and I think that's the way. And just one quick remark on the advertisement, you're totally right. It played a big role in the Hungarian elections as well. 2 years ago, before the elections, we counted like how many forints were spent on ads on mostly Facebook, but also on Instagram, and it was a massive amount. And ahead of this election, we were curious what will happen, because since last October, political paid ads are not allowed in the EU in big platforms. And of course, it was not that massive than 2 years ago, but still political actors paid and spent a massive amount of money on advertisement. So I think we really have to look into this, either the regulation side, either the platform side, that we have to deal with this, because there's a regulation, but actors keep violating it, and it means that it's not really working, so we also have to do something about it.
Lots of good questions. Here is what I'll say, and this is a blanket statement, I think, for several of the questions, which is, I mean, everyone was asking how. Yeah, I have the same question as you, so I'm sympathetic. But here's what I will say first. I think we need to be open to unlikely partnerships and unlikely heroes. This is how I would put it most succinctly. I think back to the start of the full-scale invasion. These were countries surrounding Ukraine where we were told philanthropy doesn't exist, civic participation is an all-time low, trust is an all-time low, there's nothing we can do. And so Central Europe in particular mobilized in a way that I think many of us, again, would have said prior to this is not possible. Again, have we lost momentum? Was it enough? I will not take up those questions now. The point I'm making is that the potential is there, and there is urgency. It is hard to balance this urgency with the fear-mongering, but all of us, as I said at the start, unfortunately have to learn to become now communication professionals, whether we like it or not, and this is part of the threat, and the seems that you are working very much on this, for example, so this is good. And related to this question about the advertising spend, there are the business case for combating unethical advertising and disinformation that ends up on advertising is well documented among academics, small policy circles, but it's really not well understood outside of that, outside of those communities. And there's a lot more I think we can be doing to show exactly what is the business case for where our money is ending up and for fighting disinformation. There's so much more we can be doing on this. The Democracy Shield is one mechanism in which that is, okay, starting to move forward, but this is a concrete way we can focus some of our attention. And then, again, to go back to the local communities, I mean, listen, I think we, as I said, have a massive legitimacy problem now in civil society. People look at us, we're just elites in you know, shabbier clothing, yeah? And so I think we have to use the little resources we do have to go back to some of our roots on the ground. Some of the most well-trusted institutions, especially if you're looking at this part of the world, are churches, church groups, volunteer organizations, and to your point, we might have to be a little bit uncomfortable with where those cross-cutting cleavages put us. I think you're right to say that we are polarized, and you know, this is such a buzzword now, we're all scared of polarization. I think it would be more accurate to say our societies are pillarized. We are in pillars, we are in bubbles, whichever term you like to use. This is actually an easier problem because it is not about convincing the other side, your opposite, your counterpart, to understand you. It is about finding those chains across the pillars. I know this is very abstract. I think actually when you go down to local communities, especially smaller towns and cities, it's actually quite obvious quite quickly when you have those fora for dialogue. At least this is what I have seen. And I'm getting lots of nods, so I'll pass it to you. Maybe you and Zsófia can add, Sebastián.
I mean, you were doing it brilliantly, so I wholeheartedly agree. I think to answer my colleague from the European movement in Czechia, let's have a coffee later, go local, go offline, create, but don't do an event like this one, in the sense, like we are talking, you are listening. Do a circle, put people to talk, put them to work on a specific outcome, not on a big policy paper about solving. No, how could you fix your local politics? What do you think is missing in your neighborhood? You know, all politics is local at the end of the day. How could you feel safer in the place that you live? And then from there, may be the person. People trust people. I didn't say this before about trust. there is a big elephant in the room here. The biggest disseminators of misinformation and manipulation in the history of the world, I'm sorry, are governments, right? Governments, first and foremost. We always say in the Spanish Empire ended when Gutenberg invented the print, because now we have someone who is able to challenge power. And to turn everything back to people who are in their laptop trying to do something when you have like important government machines in certain countries more than others, day in, day out, using massive public resources to disinform and to divide, like to turn the focus on the activists. Like I find always this very unfair. And if the activists had the resources that the government had, then, but the governments do, so people don't trust governments. The same way they don't trust certain journalists or civil society, but people trust people. People don't trust the European movement, Czechia. Like probably they will say, why should I even care about European? Right? But they trust, I don't know your name, but they will trust you. Right? So people trust people, go to these places. Fear-mongering is not my choice. It's not a choice, but you need to match the mood on the ground. Otherwise, you are gaslighting. Right? Gaslighting is a term that I also had to learn recently. Now, when your girlfriend, you are being a douche with your girlfriend, and then she says to you, "Hey, what's wrong?" And you say, "No, it's actually you. You are the problem. You are whatever, insecure." Right? So that's the same way that we are doing with people, right? If the people feel unsafe and insecure, they do. Like check every poll. And now you go there and you are like a happy flower, you are completely disauthorized to continue talking. That's why in the video, we start acknowledging, like, this is the situation. Now, it's the time for you to start making a change. And I'm not saying write a policy paper, a Mario Draghi report to fix everything we do. One thing. If you could change one thing, back to your point, one, what would it be? And then you start the conversation.
Okay, I'm going to try and sum up. And I have to say that when I look at the title of the panel, Europe's democratic compass, can trust and resilience be restored? After our conversation, I'm quite certain it can't. Because I think it cannot be restored, because I think the amount of change that we've lived through over the last years is enormous. What I think needs to be done, and this is what you were all saying, is that we need to build this trust and build this resilience from the bottom. We need to start over, because the situation is so different than what we've known through our whole lives that it's so easy to turn the system upside down. It's so easy for outside actors to blow everything up. So there were a number of questions about communication, about fact-checking, about truth. I think that's the thing. It's not about communicating better. It's about starting over. It's about going local. It's about talking to people. It's about a new social contract. It's about finding the new foundations of new institutions that will be able to share this trust and to build this trust from the bottom up. Because if we don't do that, if we're going to be trying to fight for the past, I'm pretty certain we're going to lose. So I think that if there's one thing that you're going to remember from this quite difficult and hot panel, I hope that this will be it. I mean, I think there's nothing to restore here. I think we need to start over, and I think we can do this together. So thank you very much. Over to Marija.